She showed up to a blind date in a torn dress, but what the single dad did changed everything. Before we continue, please tell us where in the world are you tuning in from? We love seeing how far our stories travel. Maya Santos was having the kind of day that makes you question every single life choice you've ever made. And it was only 4:30 in the afternoon on a Friday, which meant she still had 30 minutes left of her shift at Henderson's supermarket, plus a blind date at 7 that she was already regretting agreeing to. Her best friend Jenna had set the whole thing up 2 weeks ago, said, Maya, you're 33 years old, and you haven't been on a date in 18 months. You're going to die alone surrounded by grocery carts if you don't put yourself out there. And Maya had finally caved just to shut her up. But now standing in the produce section restocking apples, she was seriously considering texting this coal guy and making up some excuse about food poisoning or a family emergency or literally anything that would get her out of sitting across from a stranger making awkward small talk. Here's the thing about working retail when you're also trying to have any kind of personal life. The timing never works out right, and Maya had exactly one nice dress that was appropriate for a first date, and she'd worn it under her work uniform today because her apartment was 45 minutes away, and there was no way she could go home and change and make it back to downtown Nashville by 7 o'clock. The dress was this deep green thing she'd bought on clearance 3 years ago, and it made her feel pretty, which was important when you spent most of your life in a polyester vest with a name tag that said floor manager, like that was some kind of impressive title instead of just code for the person who deals with every customer complaint and every employee crisis for barely above minimum wage. Her plan was to clock out at 5, duck into the employee bathroom, fix her hair and makeup, ditch the ugly vest, and show up to this date looking like a normal human woman instead of someone who smelled like the deli section. That plan lasted exactly until 4:47 when Mrs. Patterson, who was 86 years old and refused to use the motorized shopping carts because she said they made her feel ancient, came around the corner by the canned goods too fast and her cartwheel caught on the edge of the display shelf, and the whole thing happened in slow motion like a nightmare you can't wake up from. The shelf wobbled and Mrs. Patterson grabbed for it to steady herself, and the whole display of soup cans came crashing down. And Mrs. Patterson went down with it, landing hard on the floor, and Maya was running before her brain even caught up to what was happening. She dropped to her knees next to Mrs. Patterson, who was conscious but dazed and possibly hurt, and Maya was checking her over while yelling for someone to call 911. And she didn't even notice the sharp piece of broken metal shelf bracket sticking out until she felt something rip and looked down to see a 6-inch tear running up the side of her dress from hip to basically her armpit. Maya's brain just completely short-circuited because that was her only nice dress, the only piece of clothing she owned that wasn't work uniform or sweatpants. And her date was in 2 hours and she lived 45 minutes away, and payday wasn't until tomorrow, so she had exactly $23 in her checking account, which was not enough to buy anything except maybe clearance socks. The paramedics showed up and took over with Mrs. Patterson, who was conscious and talking, but they wanted to take her in for x-rays just to be safe. And Maya found out later she had a minor hairline fracture, but was recovering well with her daughter taking care of her. And Maya's manager, Frank, came over and said, "Good job handling that Santos. Why don't you take your dinner break early? You've earned it." And he had no idea that Maya was standing there having a complete internal meltdown about her ruined dress and her stupid blind date and her entire mess of a life. She locked herself in the employee bathroom and stared at the damage in the mirror. And it was bad, like really bad, the kind of tear that you couldn't hide or explain away, and she tried to pin it together with the safety pins from the first aid kit. But it was obvious and terrible, and she looked like she'd been in a fight with an angry cat and lost. Maya pulled out her phone and texted Jenna, "My dress is completely destroyed. I have to cancel. There's no way I can show up looking like this." And Jenna wrote back immediately, "Cancel. Tell him you're sick. Reschedule for next week." And Maya sat there on the closed toilet seat in her torn dress in a supermarket bathroom and felt something in her chest just crack wide open. She'd been canceling on life for 18 months, ever since her last boyfriend had cheated on her, and she decided men were trash and she was better off alone. And she'd used her mom needing help and work being busy and being too tired as excuses to not try, to not risk getting hurt again, and here she was, about to do it one more time. Maya looked at herself in that fluorescent-lit bathroom mirror and made a decision that was either really brave or really stupid. She texted Cole, "Running late from work. Still coming. See you at 7." And then she texted Jenna, "I'm going. I don't care about the dress. I'm so tired of quitting on things before they even start." And Jenna sent back about 15 shocked emojis and, "You're insane, but I love you." The rest of her shift dragged by, and Maya kept checking the safety pins holding her dress together and wondering if this was actually the dumbest thing she'd ever done. And at 6:45, she clocked out and did the best she could with her hair and makeup in the bathroom and walked out to her beat-up Honda, praying the whole drive downtown that this Cole guy would be understanding, or at least not laugh in her face. The restaurant was called The Junction, and it was one of those casual, nice places that wasn't fancy enough to require reservations, but was definitely nicer than Applebee's. And Maya sat in her car in the parking lot for 5 full minutes, trying to convince herself to actually go inside. She could see through the window, and there was a guy sitting alone at a table near the front, tall with dark hair and wearing clean jeans and a button-down shirt, and he kept checking his phone and looking at the door. And Maya thought that must be Cole, and he looked normal and kind of nervous, which made him seem more human and less terrifying. She got out of the car and walked toward the entrance, holding her purse against the torn side of her dress, trying to hide the safety pins. And the second she walked through the door, Cole looked up and smiled and waved, and Maya wanted the floor to just swallow her whole. She walked over to the table and sat down before she could lose her nerve, and the words just came tumbling out. "I'm so sorry, I know how this looks. I had a work emergency, and my dress got torn, and I didn't have time to go home, and I'm not usually this much of a disaster, I swear." And her voice was shaking, and she could feel her face burning with embarrassment. Cole looked at her for a long second, and then he said, "Hold on one sec, okay? I'll be right back." And he stood up and walked out of the restaurant, and Maya sat there feeling her heart sink straight through the floor because of course he was leaving. Of course he was going to get in his truck and drive away and text her later with some excuse about forgetting something important. Why would any guy stick around for a woman who showed up to a first date looking like she'd crawled through a dumpster? But then 2 minutes later, Cole walked back in carrying a navy blue flannel shirt, and he came over to the table and held it out to her and said, "I keep spare clothes in my truck for work emergencies. Bathroom's right over there. This should cover up the tear if you want to throw it on over your dress." Maya just stared at him, completely speechless, because this man who didn't know her from a random person on the street was offering her his shirt instead of running away, or making her feel worse about showing up looking like a mess. "Why didn't you just leave?" Maya heard herself ask, and Cole sat back down and looked at her with these steady brown eyes and said, "Because you showed up, that took guts. Showing up when something's broken instead of just canceling takes real courage. Now go put on the shirt so we can order some food because I'm starving." Maya took the flannel shirt and went to the bathroom and put it on over her dress, and it smelled like sawdust and laundry detergent, and it was about 3 sizes too big, but it covered the tear perfectly. And when she looked in the mirror, she started crying because a complete stranger had just shown her more kindness in 5 minutes than most people she'd known for years. She pulled herself together and went back to the table, and Cole stood up when she approached like his mama had raised him right. And Maya sat down and said, "Thank you. You have no idea how much I needed that." And Cole smiled. "Hey, we all have days where things fall apart. I once showed up to a job site and realized I'd forgotten to put on shoes. Had to work in socks until lunch. It happens." They ordered food and started talking, and it was like someone had turned off the awkward first date switch in Maya's brain. She told him about working at the supermarket for 6 years and how she was a floor manager, which sounded impressive, but really just meant she dealt with entitled customers and broken equipment. And Cole told her he ran a small construction company and had been in the trade since he was 19, and he had a 7-year-old daughter named Iris, who he was raising by himself. "My wife Rachel passed away 3 years ago in a car accident, and it's just been me and Iris figuring it out as we go." And he said it matter of fact without asking for sympathy, and Maya reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "I'm really sorry, that must be incredibly hard." Cole squeezed back. It is sometimes still, but we're doing okay. And my buddy Dave has been bugging me for months to get back out there. Turns out he knows your friend Jenna through his girlfriend. And they cooked up this whole blind date scheme together. Maya laughed. Same. My best friend Jenna literally made the dating profile for me and set this up. I almost canceled about 15 times today, even before the dress disaster. They talked about everything. About being working class in a city that kept getting more expensive, about supporting family on paychecks that never quite stretched far enough, about doing what needed to be done even when it was hard. And somewhere around 9:30, Maya realized they'd been talking for over 2 hours, and she hadn't checked her phone once. And she felt more comfortable with this stranger than she had with guys she'd dated for months. Cole walked her to her car around 10, and Maya said, I still have your shirt, holding up the flannel she'd taken off and folded. And Cole grinned. Keep it for now. Gives me a good excuse to see you again. Plus, it looks better on you anyway. Maya drove home wearing the biggest smile she'd had in months and thinking about how she'd almost canceled, almost let embarrassment and fear keep her from showing up. And if she had, she would have missed meeting someone who looked at her torn dress and saw courage instead of disaster. And maybe that's what she'd been missing all along. Someone who saw the broken parts and didn't run. 3 weeks after their first date, Maya had seen Cole 6 times, and every single meeting felt easier and more natural than the last. They'd done coffee and walks and one really bad mini golf game where Cole beat her by like 20 strokes, and she accused him of hustling her. And somewhere around date 4, Maya realized she was falling for this guy in a way that felt both terrifying and inevitable at the same time. Week 3, Cole asked if she wanted to meet Iris, and Maya's stomach absolutely dropped because meeting the kid felt huge, like crossing some invisible line from casual dating into actual serious territory. But she said yes anyway because she was tired of letting fear make her decisions for her. Iris was 7 years old with dark curly hair and her dad's brown eyes and the kind of cautious politeness that kids have when they're protecting themselves from getting hurt. And Maya showed up at Cole's house on a Saturday morning with ingredients to make pancakes because Jenna had said, kids love pancakes. You can't go wrong with pancakes. They spent the morning in Cole's kitchen and Iris watched Maya carefully, like she was taking notes for some kind of evaluation, asked questions like, do you like my dad a lot? And are you going to stay forever or are you going to go away? And Maya's heart broke a little bit because she could see in those brown eyes the fear of losing someone again. A 7-year-old who already understood that people you love can disappear without warning. I really like your dad, and I'm not planning on going anywhere, Maya said while flipping a pancake, and Iris nodded very seriously like she was filing that information away to review later. By the end of the morning, Iris had warmed up enough to show Maya her room and her favorite books, and her collection of rocks she'd found at different construction sites with her dad. And Cole stood in the doorway, watching them with this expression on his face that made Maya's chest feel tight. You're good with her, he said later after Iris went to play outside, and Maya shrugged. She's a great kid. You're doing an amazing job raising her. And Cole pulled her close and kissed her and said, I'm really glad you didn't cancel that first date. And Maya laughed against his shoulder. Even though I showed up looking like a disaster? And Cole squeezed her tighter. Especially because of that, you showed me who you really are right from the start. Week 4 hit and Maya's entire world came crashing down in the span of a 15-minute staff meeting. Her district manager showed up on a Tuesday morning looking grim and gathered everyone in the break room and announced that Henderson's corporate had decided to close 12 underperforming locations, and their store was on the list. They had 30 days, and then everyone was out of a job right before the holidays. Maya felt the room tilt sideways because she'd been at this store for 6 years. It wasn't a great job, but it was steady, and it paid her bills and helped support her mom, who lived on a fixed income that barely covered her medication. And the idea of losing it with zero backup plan made her want to throw up right there in the break room. She didn't tell Cole right away, because what was she supposed to say? Hey, I know we're in this great new relationship, but my life is falling apart, and I'm about to lose everything. She spent 3 days applying to every job she could find online, retail and restaurant and office admin, and literally anything that would pay her enough to cover rent and her mom's expenses. And she got exactly 0 callbacks because apparently 33-year-old supermarket managers weren't in high demand. Cole texted her asking to get dinner, and she made excuses about being busy with work stuff, which wasn't technically a lie. And he called her twice, and she let it go to voicemail because she couldn't stand the idea of hearing his voice and having to pretend everything was fine. Friday afternoon, Cole showed up at the supermarket unannounced, holding 2 coffees and looking happy to surprise her. And the second he walked through the doors, he saw the giant yellow signs everywhere screaming, "Store closing sale, everything must go." And his face changed to understanding and then concern. He found Maya in the home goods aisle marking down prices and said, "Why didn't you tell me?" And Maya kept her eyes on the price gun in her hands. "Because I don't need rescuing, Cole. I'm a grown woman. I'll figure it out." Cole set down the coffees and took the price gun out of her hands and made her look at him. "Maya asking for help isn't the same as needing to be rescued. Why are you shutting me out?" Maya felt tears starting, and she was not going to cry in the middle of her closing down supermarket surrounded by clearance signs. "Because this is my mess to deal with? We've barely been dating a month. That doesn't mean you have to solve my problems." And her voice came out sharper than she meant it to. Cole was quiet for a second, and then he said, "My construction office is a complete disaster. I need someone to answer phones and do scheduling and handle paperwork. I'll pay you 22 an hour to start. When can you begin?" Maya's head snapped up. "I don't want a pity job. I don't want you creating a position just because you feel sorry for me." And Cole looked frustrated. "It's not pity, Maya. I genuinely need help. I'm drowning in invoices and missed calls. You'd actually be doing me a favor." They argued right there in aisle 7, between the discounted kitchen towels and the clearance picture frames, and Maya said no about 5 different times, in 5 different ways, because accepting felt like admitting she couldn't handle her own life. And finally Cole said, "Fine, don't take the job, but please stop shutting me out like I'm some stranger instead of someone who cares about you." And he left the coffees and walked out. And Maya stood there feeling like the biggest idiot in Nashville. The next 2 weeks were absolutely brutal. Maya worked every available shift at the liquidation sale, trying to squeeze out every last paycheck, came home exhausted and defeated every night. And the job applications she was sending out were disappearing into the void with 0 responses. Her landlord left a message about next month's rent, and Maya had to admit she didn't have it, couldn't pay it, was going to have to break her lease and figure out something else. And she stopped answering Cole's calls completely because she was so ashamed of how badly she was failing at adult life. Iris asked Cole at dinner one night, "Dad, where's Maya? Did you make her mad? She hasn't been here in forever." And Cole tried to explain, "She's going through some hard stuff right now, bug. Sometimes grown-ups need space to figure things out." But Iris crossed her arms and said with perfect 7-year-old logic, "You always tell me when things are hard, that's when we help people the most. So why aren't we helping her?" Cole showed up at Maya's apartment on a Saturday morning 3 weeks after their fight. And when Maya opened the door looking exhausted in sweatpants and an old t-shirt, he didn't say anything about the eviction notice taped to her door, just asked, "Can I come in?" Maya stepped aside because she was too tired to argue. And the second the door closed behind him, she just broke, started crying those ugly sobs that come from holding everything in for too long. "I'm failing, Cole. I can't find a job. I can't pay my rent. My mom needs help and I can't give it to her. I'm losing everything and I don't know how to fix it." And she was crying so hard she could barely breathe. And Cole pulled her into his arms and let her completely fall apart. "Let me help you, please, Maya. You showed up in a torn dress and didn't quit." "Don't quit now," Cole said into her hair. Maya pulled back. "I don't want to be your charity case. I don't want you with me because you feel sorry for me." And Cole's voice got intense in a way she hadn't heard before. "You're not charity. You're the woman I'm falling for. And Iris adores you. And we want to help because that's what you do when you care about someone this much." Maya froze because he just said love, like it was obvious and simple. And she whispered, "You love me?" And Cole cupped her face. "Yeah, I'm falling for you hard. I've been falling since you showed up looking terrified in my flannel shirt. Now please stop being so stubborn and let us help." They sat on her couch and made an actual plan. Instead of Maya trying to handle everything alone, she agreed to take the admin job at his construction office at least temporarily until she found something in her field. And she'd move in with her mom to save money and help take care of her, which solved 2 problems at once. We're in this together now, okay? No more shutting me out when things get hard, Cole said, and Maya nodded. I'm really bad at asking for help. I'm gonna mess this up probably. And Cole kissed her. Then we'll figure it out together. That's what love is, showing up for each other, especially when things are broken. 14 months went by, and Maya's life looked so completely different from that nightmare period when everything was falling apart that sometimes she had to pinch herself to make sure it was actually real and not some elaborate stress dream her brain had cooked up to cope with disaster. She'd started working at Cole's construction office thinking it would just be a temporary stopgap until she found a real job back in retail or something similar. Except here's what nobody had told her about herself. She was absolutely incredible at construction office management in a way she'd never been incredible at anything else in her entire working life. Cole's paperwork situation before Maya showed up had been held together with hope and duct tape and probably some prayers his mom was saying without him knowing. Invoices were scattered across 3 different systems that didn't talk to each other. Client communication was this disaster of missed calls and forgotten follow-ups. And the scheduling situation was basically organized chaos on a good day and complete anarchy on a bad one. Maya walked in on her first official day, took one long look at the absolute mess that was Cole's filing cabinet and computer desktop, rolled up her sleeves and got to work like she'd been preparing for this job her entire life without realizing it. Within 2 weeks, she'd implemented a digital project management system that actually made sense, organized all his client files, both physical and digital, created professional-looking proposal templates that didn't look like they'd been typed on a typewriter in somebody's basement, and set up a phone system where clients actually got called back within 24 hours instead of 3 days later, when Cole remembered to check his voicemail. The absolutely crazy part was how much she genuinely loved doing all of it. There was something deeply satisfying about taking a chaotic situation and bringing actual order to it, about being the person who made sure projects ran smoothly and clients felt heard and workers got their paychecks on time without drama. By her 3rd month in the role, Cole bid on this major contract for a residential development project that would have been completely out of his league before Maya came along. But she helped him put together a proposal package that was so polished and professional that the developers actually commented on it during the pitch meeting, said they'd never seen such organized documentation from a small contractor. They won the contract against 3 bigger companies, and it was the biggest job Cole's operation had ever landed. Enough work to keep his entire crew busy for 8 solid months, and enough money to actually expand the business, instead of just scraping by paycheck to paycheck like he'd been doing for years. When Cole got the phone call confirming they'd won the bid, he literally picked Maya up off her office chair and spun her around yelling, "We did it! Holy crap, we actually did it!" And Maya was laughing and crying at the same time because this felt like winning in a way she'd never experienced in 6 years of supermarket management, where success was measured in whether or not the produce section got stocked on time. That same night, Cole sat Maya down in the office after everyone else had gone home and said something that made her heart completely stop beating. "I want to make you an official business partner, starting with 20% equity now and building toward 50-50 over the next 3 years as we grow together. You're not just my admin or my office manager. You're the reason this company is actually growing instead of just surviving, and I want this to be ours, not just mine." Maya stared at him, completely stunned, because this felt huge and real and permanent. "Cole, are you sure you've thought this through? That's a massive decision." And Cole shook his head, looking more serious than she'd ever seen him. "I'm not giving you anything, Maya. You earned every bit of this. My revenue is up 42% since you started, and we're landing contracts I never could have even bid on alone. This is a smart business decision that also happens to involve the woman I'm in love with." Maya said yes, obviously, because she wasn't a complete idiot. And then she did something she'd been secretly thinking about for weeks. She enrolled herself in an online certification program for construction project management, because if this was actually going to be her career path, she wanted to do it the right way and learn everything she possibly could. Her mom was so proud she cried when Maya told her, said, "I always knew you were meant for something bigger than that supermarket, even when you didn't know it yourself." And Maya realized that sometimes the worst thing that can happen, losing a job you thought you needed, turns out to be the push toward the thing you were actually supposed to be doing all along. A year and a half after their first date in that torn green dress, Cole told Maya to meet him for dinner and wouldn't say where. Just texted her an address and told her to dress nice. And when Maya pulled up to the location, she realized with this sudden jolt of recognition that it was the Junction, the exact same restaurant where they'd had their blind date all those months ago. Cole was waiting outside looking nervous in a way that made Maya's stomach do flips. And when she got out of her car, he took her hand, and his palm was actually sweating, which was adorable and terrifying at the same time. I wanted to bring you back here because this is where everything started, where you taught me something I didn't even know I needed to learn. They walked inside, and the same hostess from that first night recognized them and smiled really big and led them to the exact same corner table they'd sat at on that first awkward night. And Maya was starting to suspect something major was happening, but she couldn't quite let herself believe it yet, because that felt like jinxing it. Cole ordered them both coffee the way they'd done on that first date, and then he reached across the table and took both of Maya's hands in his, and she could feel her heart absolutely pounding against her ribs. A year and a half ago, you walked through that door wearing a torn dress, and I watched you almost turn around and leave. I saw it on your face that you were about 2 seconds from just bailing and going home. But you didn't. You sat down and you apologized like showing up imperfect was something to be ashamed of instead of something brave. His voice was shaking slightly, and Maya felt tears already starting to build. But Maya, that torn dress taught me what real courage actually looks like. It's not showing up when everything's perfect and polished. It's showing up when things are broken and messy and doing it anyway because you made a commitment to try. Cole stood up from his chair and dropped to one knee right there in the middle of the restaurant and pulled out a small velvet box, and Maya's hands flew to her mouth because this was really happening. This was actually truly happening right now. Maya Santos, will you marry me? Will you let me spend the rest of my life showing up for you the way you've shown up for everything we've built together? Will you be my partner in business and in life and help me raise Iris, who already loves you, like you're hers, and ask me every single week when I'm going to make it official? Maya couldn't even speak. She was crying so hard, just nodded frantically over and over until she could finally choke out, "Yes, oh my God, yes, I love you so much. Yes, absolutely yes." And Cole slid the most beautiful simple ring on her finger and stood up and kissed her while the entire restaurant erupted in cheers and applause. After she said yes and they'd both stopped crying enough to see straight, Cole handed her a wrapped gift box from under the table and said, "I have something else for you, something I've been holding on to." And Maya opened it with hands that were still shaking to find two things carefully folded inside. The first item was the navy blue flannel shirt from their very first date, the one he'd pulled out of his work truck and given her to cover the tear in her dress, washed and folded carefully like it was something precious. "You kept this? All this time you kept it?" Maya whispered while holding the soft fabric, and Cole nodded with wet eyes. "I kept it because that shirt represents the exact moment I knew you were different from anyone I'd ever met. The moment you showed me exactly who you really were, without any pretense or performance." The second thing in the box made Maya absolutely lose it all over again. It was a new dress in that same deep green color as the one she'd torn. Same style, but perfect and whole and beautiful. And attached to the hanger was a handwritten note in Cole's messy handwriting that said, "For our wedding day, but honestly I fell in love with you in the torn one. You were always beautiful, especially when things were broken." Maya clutched both the shirt and the dress and cried so hard the waiter brought over extra napkins, and Cole just held her and let her feel everything, all the relief and joy and disbelief that her life had gone from falling apart to this in just over a year. They got married 9 months later in April on a perfect Saturday afternoon at a small venue just outside Nashville, with about 60 of their favorite people watching them promise forever to each other. Maya walked down the aisle in the deep green dress Cole had given her at the proposal, and when he saw her coming toward him in the color that started everything, his eyes filled with tears before she even reached him. Iris was the flower girl wearing a lavender dress she'd picked out herself after trying on approximately 17 options, and she took her job so seriously she had an actual written checklist and kept bossing around the wedding coordinator about timing. Maya's mom walked her down the aisle, crying those happy mom tears and telling anyone who would listen that she'd been praying for years for someone good enough for her daughter, and God had answered with a construction worker in a flannel shirt who saw her baby's worth. Cole's entire work crew showed up in their nicest jeans and cleanest work boots, and they cheered so loud when the officiant said, "You may kiss your bride," that the photographer jumped. The reception was held at their construction office because Maya had insisted on it, said, "This is where we built our actual life together. This is where we became partners. This is where we should celebrate." And they'd transformed the space with string lights and flowers and tables covered in photos, documenting their whole journey from that disastrous first date to this moment. On the main wall of the office, Maya had created a shadow box frame containing the original flannel shirt with a small engraved plaque underneath that read, "The shirt that started everything." And literally every single client who came into the office asked about it, and Maya never got tired of telling the story of showing up to a blind date in a torn dress and meeting a man who gave her his shirt instead of his judgment. The wedding reception went late into the night with dancing and honestly terrible karaoke, and Iris reading from note cards. Her dad helped her write about how she asked God for a mom, and he sent Maya, who makes really good pancakes and makes her dad smile again, and she's really glad Maya is her family now. Cole's toast was about broken things leading to beautiful things, and how sometimes what looks like your worst day is actually the door opening to your best life, and there wasn't a dry eye in the entire room. Maya's best friend Jenna took full credit for setting up the blind date and demanded to be named godmother of their future children, and everyone laughed because they all knew that torn dress and that flannel shirt had done more matchmaking than any dating app ever could. 2 years later, Maya and Cole were in their bedroom getting ready for a weekend trip when Maya found the original torn green dress tucked away in a memory box in the back of her closet, and she pulled it out and just held it for a minute, remembering how utterly mortified she'd been that night. How close she'd come to just canceling and going home. Cole walked up behind her and wrapped his arms around her waist, looking over her shoulder at the dress. "I was wondering where that ended up. I can't believe you actually kept it after everything." And Maya leaned back against his chest. "Of course I kept it. This ridiculous torn dress changed my entire life. I was so embarrassed that night, Cole. I genuinely thought you'd take one look at me and just walk out." Cole turned her around to face him and took the dress from her hands. "This torn dress brought you to me, showed me what you were really made of, showed me courage and determination, and the kind of person who shows up even when things are falling apart." He folded it carefully and placed it back in the memory box right next to the note from the green dress. "These are the two most important pieces of clothing in our entire house, because they represent the moment everything changed. Broken things leading to the most beautiful things if you're just brave enough to show up anyway." Sometimes your absolute worst moment turns out to be the doorway to your best life. Maya showed up to a blind date in a torn dress thinking she was about to be humiliated, and instead found a man who taught her that courage looks like safety pins. And showing up scared, Cole gave a stranger his shirt and got back a wife and a business partner and a life more full than he'd dreamed possible. If this story reminded you that broken doesn't mean worthless, that asking for help isn't the same as being weak, and that the person who sees you at your lowest and chooses to stay anyway is exactly the person worth building forever with, hit that subscribe button and share this with someone who needs to hear that showing up imperfect is always better than not showing up at all. Thanks for being here with us, and remember that torn dress might just be exactly what leads you straight to your happily ever after.